Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Today we're going to look at a piece that's a little on the rare side. This is made by a company called AMT, okay, and it is an Automag II. Now this is a .22 Magnum pistol. It's got a single stack magazine, 7 rounds, okay, and one in the pipe, one in the chamber. So a maximum of 8 rounds. It's a fairly small gun. It's not very big. In fact, for my hands, it's actually a little too small because my pinky is clear off the end of the gun down here, as you can see. So it's a little on the small side for me. It shoots pretty well. It has adjustable sights on it. It's a pretty decent gun. So with that, we're going to verify that we have no ammunition in the gun, like we always do, all right, and that there is no ammunition in the work area. So, sometimes, I don't do it on every show, I probably should, but sometimes I go over the 3 gun safety rules. 1, always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. 2, always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. And 3, always keep the gun unloaded until you're ready to use it. So this gun has some neat features to it. You can pull the trigger and drop the hammer on this thing, whether the safety is on or off. I know that sounds like it's dangerous. Well, I'm not in love with it, but it is what it is. So if you'll watch, when I manipulate the safety, you're going to see the hammer move back and forth. It's back right now, but when I drop it, it goes closed. As I pull it down, you'll see it push that hammer back. So what is going on, let me cock this thing and I'll show you, is down inside here, okay, there is a rounded block that comes up. As that safety moves, it just comes up and simply blocks the hammer from actually hitting the firing pin down in here. So you can drop the hammer, but it never hits the firing pin. If this thing fails, then you got a problem. Well, I'm not in love with it, but I don't trust safeties anyway. I use them, but I don't trust them to the point where I think, well, it's okay to point the gun. It's not, okay, because safeties are a mechanical device. Any mechanical device can and will fail. It's just the nature of mechanics. So with that, we're going to take this puppy apart. It's very, very similar in its disassembly to the 1911. Okay, on the front of the barrel, you have a bushing right here that goes around the barrel and is locked in place by this guide rod follower, which is actually a recoil spring follower in this case. It rides on the guide rod, but this thing is kind of a pain in the butt to get it depressed and rotate that bushing. You can do it, but it's kind of a pain in the neck. So once that happens, your recoil spring will come right out the front, but so will the guide rod. Okay, you can actually remove the guide rod right out of the gun. So this will have to be cleaned and lubricated. All right, now as far as taking the slide off is concerned, I'm going to go ahead and pull the bushing out of the front of the barrel. Okay, that just allows the barrel a little bit of slack to move around. I'm going to make sure it's cocked, and I'm going to pull the slide all the way back. Now, one thing about this gun, if your safety is engaged when you're trying to remove the slide, it won't come off, all right? It'll stop. So we're going to push this up a little bit, and on the opposite side, you see a little button right over here. You're going to push that button in, and that's going to shove that pin right out, and that releases the barrel. Okay, now the barrel is released and it will come off with the slide. But this is what I was telling you about that safety. If you push this thing forward, the safety blocks it from coming all the way off. So disengage the safety and it will slide off the end of the gun. All right. So now you've got the slide and the barrel in your hand. Simply pick up on the barrel and slide it out the back of the slide. And that's all there is to the basic disassembly for cleaning on this gun. I haven't had the grips off the side of this thing in a long time, so I'm going to go ahead and take them off this time. Personally, I would say you don't have to take the grips off every single time you clean the gun. But it's not a problem if you do. There's nothing wrong with doing that. So I'm going to loosen these screws and take this side panel off. And we're going to take a look and see how we look in here. So off they come, and we look real good. Okay, we'll do the other side. These grips are plastic. I considered making a pair out of wood for it one time, but these have got the AMT logo on it, and being that it's all original, I thought I'd just leave it alone. So now, since we've got the side panels off, you can see the trigger bar that goes back and releases the sear and allows that hammer to come down. All right. So this little spring should have some lubrication on it. Okay. There is a little part that comes out of this gun that it'll fall out of your hand when you turn it over upside down. So this part fits right into this hole. Now what is that part? That part is the ejector. As the slide comes back, okay, this protrudes enough to hit the back of the cartridge case and push it out through the opening on the slide. If it comes out, it's no big deal. It comes out. But you got to make sure that you put it in the right way. If you put it in the wrong way, you're not going to get the gun back together, for one. And two, it would not function. So you need to keep this turned around facing forward so it sticks out a little bit. Alright, so we're going to take that out. We're going to clean it all up, and we'll go from there. Now, there is a spring in this gun that is your trigger return spring, and that's back here. But there's another one that's down inside the frame. I'm trying to get you some good light on it. It's very difficult. If I can get it right at the right angle, you might be able to see it down in there. In fact, what I think I'm going to do is use my trusty dusty flashlight in there. And if you look down in there, you can see that spring. What that little spring down there does is it holds the pin for the slide lock barrel retaining pin. It holds it in place, okay? So it does have a function. It also, as the barrel comes down, it depresses that spring, okay? And then you line it up with the hole for the pin to go through. All right. Once it's in there, you're good to go. So it's a decent gun. It's not bad, but like others, it absolutely needs to be lubricated and it needs to be cleaned. This one's been in my safe for so long, everything seems to be pretty dry on it. And the barrel is a little dirty, so it won't hurt to clean it. So the last gun I worked on was a .22. The .22 Magnum has the same size bore, okay? The chamber is different, but the bore is the same. So what we're going to do is get a patch that is appropriate to a .22, okay? In other words, about 1 inch by 1 inch. We're going to wet it with our solvent, our bore cleaner. This is a military bore cleaner that I bought years ago. I bought like 6 cans of it. I'm down to like 1 can left now. But when you wet your patch here, you kind of got to be a little bit careful about it, otherwise you end up pouring it all over the table. So on the tip of your jag, there's a little sharp point. This point is used to mount your cleaning patch on. You just stab it right through the patch. If I can hold on to the rod. stab it through the patch, and then that will go right down your barrel. Okay. Now this jag is going to be a tight fit in this barrel, so it's not going to go through easily. You're going to have to push some. And be careful, because some of the corners on this barrel where it's machined are on the sharp side. Okay, so kind of be careful as you grip it. Okay, so we got a good bit of dirt out on that first pass. Now we're going to take our patch and turn it the other way around. And by doing that, we get to use the other side of the patch, which is still clean. Oh, I forgot to take the rod out. We get to use the other side of the patch, which is still clean. All right, and that way we get two passes at it. Boy, those corners are sharp on that barrel. Okay, now after we've done that, we've got all the deposits in that barrel wet with that bore cleaner. Okay, so it's going to be working its way in. So on most guns, I don't usually recommend that you have to use a bore brush on it every time. There is an exception, and that is .22 caliber. The reason why is .22 caliber bullets are lead. Now this one, the last box of ammo I got, they were actually jacketed bullets, but I'm going to go ahead and use the bore brush anyway, just on general principle, show you how it's done. Now, the bristles on a bore brush, pardon me, are of a certain length. So when you put your bore brush down your barrel, the bristles bend backwards. Now, if you try to change directions and pull it back outward while it's still in the barrel, what happens is those bristles will actually kink. Okay, they'll bend in the middle and kink. And then that bore brush is actually going to get smaller in diameter, and it'll become a little too small to do its job very well. So when you push your brush through your barrel, push it all the way through until it comes out the other end, and then pull it all the way back. This is going to increase the longevity of your bore brush drastically. So one of the questions I've gotten on why don't I use a bore brush most of the time, well, it's a little bit abrasive on the inside of that barrel. But if we've got lead deposits in that barrel, that's exactly what we're going to need to get them out. So you don't have to be afraid to use your bore brush. It's not like it's going to end the world. I like using the jag. It's a little easier on my bore in the long run. So now that we've brushed the barrel, all of what was in this barrel, all of those deposits that we just scraped out of there with that brush, all of that's now suspended in the fluid that's still in that barrel. Okay, so we're going to get a clean dry patch and put it on, and we're going to push all that back out of there. Make sure it's nice and dry in there. And as you can see from that patch, there was a lot of junk in that barrel, suspended in that fluid. So, with that, we're going to inspect the barrel. We're going to look through and see how we are. Now, you can either hold it up to a light, which kind of blinds me when I do that, or you can use a patch and just reflect the white light off that patch is enough to nicely light the inside of that barrel. So I'm going to try and show you that. All right, so you can see through the barrel, but you can see through it a whole lot better when you reflect the light into it with that white patch. You can see the difference there. Okay, so it just makes it a little easier to see through that barrel. So when I look down here, it looks nice and clean. Okay, so with that, we're going to take a regular .30 caliber patch, which is a little bigger, and I'm going to start cleaning up the frame. Okay, now there are some deposits in here that are going to come off, as you can see. So we're going to get this all cleaned up. Doesn't take real long. The first part, we're just getting it wet so that it comes off easy. And the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to probably get a brush in here and clean this real good, because it's been a while since I've had this gun down this far. It's been a while since I even had it out of a safe. I don't shoot it much because 22 Magnum is a little on the expensive side. And I don't have sponsors yet to buy my ammunition for me, so since I got to buy my own, cost does mean something to me. Alrighty. So, we're going to take our brush now, and we're going to get into these slide rails. And we're going to brush them a little bit to make sure we get all the garbage out of that slide rail on both sides. Now, one of the things that happens sometimes with cleaning patches is that the nap off the patches will sometimes hang up on little burrs and little edges that are in the gun. You probably can't see it, but I got a little piece of it right here, and I got another little piece down inside there. So you want to make sure that all of those are out. One of the things that happens with them is it kind of sucks up the oil and it soaks into that fiber, and it diminishes the lubricating value of that oil. So we're going to try and get a lot of that clean, but if you see that you're picking up a lot of fibers out of your patch, you may want to switch to a different material, like a t-shirt material or something like that, instead of your normal patches, which are flannel. So, I think we got it. And now we're going to take our rag and we're just going to clean that off. Just make sure we're clean. Got all our deposits off of it. Okay. So now we got our barrel and our frame clean. Now we're going to move on to our slide. There are lots of little nooks and crannies and valleys down in this slide that collect dirt. So what we're going to try and do is get all that wet down there. And we're going to get a good amount of material on our patch. And I'm going to use a small screwdriver just to simply push that wet patch down into those grooves, all right, and get the deposits wet so they're soaking a little bit, all right, and that's going to loosen them up a lot, so when I use that cleaning brush on it, it'll get a lot of that out of there. So if you'll look at this patch when I pull it out, it is very dirty. Guns will collect burnt powder residue in a variety of different places. Revolvers tend to be real heavy on the front side of the cylinder. Semi-automatics, you get a lot back up here in your slide, so you're going to want to pay particular attention to areas where you get a lot of deposits, all right? So once you've got them wet like that, okay, they'll come out pretty easily. And as you can see, we've already gotten an awful lot of sludge out of that gun. Alright, so now I'm going to take my brush, and get into all those little crevices. You can do this with an old toothbrush. It'll work just fine. But if you buy cleaning brushes, some of them have narrow bristles on one end that make it a little easier sometimes to get down into these little small channels down in here. Make it a lot easier for you to get it broken loose. Alright, now there was a big deposit in there. Alright, make sure your slide rails are nice and clean, because that's a high wear area. As that action goes back and forth on these rails, it's constantly dragging metal to metal. So you need to make sure that that's lubricated when you start to oil the gun up. Alright, so we're going to get everything shined up in here and all spiffy clean. I know spiffy, that's going back a few years. Back when I think it was in junior high school the last time I heard somebody use that term. So, probably telling on myself at how old I am. Usually my white beard kind of gives away how old I am. But, you know, now I'm kind of vocalizing it. Alright, so, once we get her cleaned up, now we're going to get out our oil can. I always recommend using a specifically formulated gun oil, formulated specifically for guns. Some plastics, and some guns have plastic parts in them, they don't react well with certain types of oil. Now, I've never had a problem with a gun with the part going bad from contamination of oil, but I have had plastic parts in other types of machinery go bad. So the problem is you don't know how a plastic is going to react unless you test it. So if I was going to test it on one of these things, I would probably go someplace like the inside of the grip and put just a little drop in there and let it set a little bit, and then wipe it off, get a little drop on there, and find out if there was any decay happening on that plastic. That's a way that you can test to make sure that you don't have a problem with oil on that plastic. Now, since I've cleaned this before, I know I don't have that problem. Also, this is a gun oil. It's specifically formulated for guns, and the manufacturers know what oils you're going to be using on these guns. They've got a good idea of how they're going to be formulated. And as a result, they make the guns so the plastic is not harmed by the oils. So, yeah, there's no decay in there, nothing's gone bad, so we should be all right. Two things happen with plastics. They swell up or they crumble, okay? And sometimes you can see it literally eating into the plastic if you're testing it. All right, so let's get some oil going. All right, now there's a spring right back here. Oh, we want to put some on. All right. I like to get it right down in here around the hammer pin, where the pin goes through the hammer, where it rotates, okay? We're going to want some on our return spring for our trigger, okay? Any place where that trigger rides through the metal, okay, we're going to want to drop. Now that one I didn't even get inside the gun, so I'm going to start over. Okay, that works. All right, we're going to put a little drop under here. That'll soak in all through it. We're going to put one here, just a little bit, okay? And that spring I told you about that's down inside down here, we're going to put a drop on that. All right, so there is another spring that's back here in the bottom on your magazine release. We're going to put a little drop on that, okay? And that'll work through the pin so the magazine release is nice and free. All right, so on the slide, you can see places that get a lot of wear because they'll start to shine. They get shiny, okay? And so you can see, I don't know if you can see it well in there, but try and rock it back and forth, but you'll see a little ridge right along here that's shining, and another one right here, okay? So wherever you see those shiny spots, you're going to want to put a drop of oil there. On the slide rail where it actually rides, you're going to want to drop in there. I'd say one on the front, one on the back will do you just fine. This middle bar, that also is a high traffic area. The hammer drags across that, so you're going to want a little in there. You're going to want a little in your safety, okay? Make sure that that rotates cleanly. Okay. All right, that's soaked right in there. All right, so now that we've got the oil in that and in the frame, it's time to start putting this little devil back together. It's not a complicated gun. It's pretty darn simple, as a matter of fact, which that suits me just fine. I'm okay with that. So we're going to stick our barrel back in it, all right, and we're going to turn our slide upside down and fit it right in. Now the barrel has to go into a slot in there, and it's going to push backwards against that spring. So you're going to have to get that into place. All right. And once you've done that, oh, I missed something. Look at that, I forgot something. What did I forget? I forgot the ejector. So we got to put that back in the gun. Otherwise, it will not eject properly. Okay. Come on, you. Okay, now that's in. All right, so that barrel has to go in that little slot in the middle. Okay, now we're going to pull it back so this triangular shaped cutout is above that second hole in the frame toward the back. All right. Then we're going to take our slide lock slide release pin and we're going to slide it in. Okay, and put it through that hole. All right, until it clicks into place. Once it's all the way in, okay, now we can slide our slide back forward. All right. Once that slide is forward, we can put our bushing in the front of the barrel. Okay. And then we can take our recoil spring and guide rod and fit that right back into the gun. All right. Depress it. I'm not showing you much. Sorry about it. Let me do that again so you can see what I'm doing. I got out of the camera frame. My apologies. All right. So after we've got that barrel put in the gun, okay, we're going to slip the bushing back in on the barrel and get it positioned so it goes all the way down. Then we're going to take our guide rod and our recoil spring and we're going to put a drop of oil on that before we put it back in the gun because I didn't put any on there before. Okay, put a couple drops in there and we're going to drop that right back down in the gun. We're going to push that piece down, okay, and you can kind of hook it because it's got two ledges. All right. And the hard part is getting it down far enough that that bushing will rotate. Once it starts to rotate into place, when you get it lined up pretty good, you're going to probably have to fidget with it a little bit to get it to snap up in. But once it's snapped up in, you're back together. From there, we're going to put our grips back on. Not a big problem. Okay. And we get our screwdriver and crank them in. Now when you're tightening up grips, okay, it's actually not as hard as you might think to crack them. If you over tighten them, they will crack. So you want to be careful not to over tighten your grips. The other thing that you want to be sure of is that you don't tighten up both screws all the way. Looks like something's out of place. All right, so I'll have to take this back off again. All right, let me show you what just happened that I hadn't realized would happen on this gun, and that is that the trigger bar came out from underneath the slide where it's supposed to fit in here. And it's never done that to me before. Good thing I noticed it. So now we can put our grip back on. That's the only problem with taking the grip off every time, is that you find things like that you didn't know were a problem. But it's okay. I mean, you got to clean it and lubricate it. So when you snug these up, don't over torque them. Okay, over torquing them can crack the grips, especially if they're wood grips. All right, get in there, you little stinker. And once we got her started, we're going to put the other one in and get it going into place. Oh, get in there, you. And we're back together. Check the function on everything, make sure everything's doing what it's supposed to. Okay, slide locks back, slide releases, hammer drops, magazine goes in the well and comes back out again. All right, everything looks good. And that is the AMT Automag II, a little stainless 22 Magnum. Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. If you found this video to be helpful and informative, don't forget to like us, and please subscribe, and by all means come to visit us at askbill1911.com. Also, I want to talk to you about something that's very important to us, and that's your safety. So please, don't try any of the things you see on our videos until you have thoroughly reviewed and understood our safety procedures. If you're under 18 years of age, do not try any of these topics without the express permission of your parent or guardian. Thank you.